If you thought Antonio Brown would just go away when the NFL was done with him, never underestimate the power of what bleep you money can do.
And I just want you guys to know we don't have the time to do this, but go back and just look at all of his articles and just retroactively vote Mike Tomlin for Coach of the Year if that was possible multiple times over for dealing with Antonio Brown at the end of this Steelers run.
Not just the end. That was just when it became
Well,
unmanageable.
that's when we, the public, knew about it. Who knows what Mike Tomlin had been doing the previous 5 years before that. It's funny because Antonio Brown was Mr. Consistency. He was the surefire top three fantasy wide receiver every year until he wasn't. Oh,
Yeah. Okay, one of the big debates about Antonio Brown is when exactly did, let me phrase this very carefully. When exactly did the unusual behavior start? There's a lot of people that want to point to the Vontez Perfect, you know,
it, decapitation.
I was going to go impromptu brain surgery,
Okay, that works.
but
Not, I mean, if his screws were buttoned down, Antonio Brown's that is, before that hit, they were knocked loose, and he very much came unhinged. But I believe you were telling me the other day that there might have been some more evidence that Antonio Brown was a little bit crazier before that hit took place.
I mean, Cleveland Browns fans will remember if they, once we bring it up at least anyway. In his rookie year, Antonio Brown was the punt returner for the Steelers. There was a play against the Cleveland Browns fairly early in the year where Antonio Brown was returning the punt and he was breaking loose, and there was nobody to beat but the punter. And he tried to make it look like he was trying to hurdle the Browns punter and instead just straight up kicked him in the face and like cleat to the face mask, rides him down, stomps him into the ground, and keeps going. And he might have scored, but there was a 15-yard penalty there. I called him boot to the head Brown his entire career, and I was somebody who largely owned him in fantasy.
Oh my God. This is rookie year. Remember, he was like, I think, a fifth round draft pick. So it's not like he signed a big money contract at the time. There's probably a big correlation to a lot of the crazy antics coming out and unhinged once he signed his second contract. But I don't think we have time to deep dive that. Do you have any more final thoughts before we move on to the next article today? Because we got a lot to cover.
No, I mean, my personal thought for a lot of this stuff is money doesn't change you, it just makes you more of what you already are. Kind of like getting old. Antonio Brown has made, I've looked it up per spot track, over $80 million as a player alone in the NFL.
Not including
Starting,
endorsements.
starting in 2012, his third season when they signed him to his extension, and he was making 9 million, 7 million, 6 million. They loaded him up again, 10 million, 17 million, 16 million, and then finally decided they'd had it. And that was the
Well,
bulk of his contract from the Steelers.
of course they had it. He didn't show up to a must-win game the last week of the season when they needed to win to make the playoffs. It's kind of hard to come back from that in the locker room.
When he was
Pittsburgh
a
won.
$16.7 million a year wide receiver
Yeah,
in 2018.
the crazy part was Pittsburgh won that game anyways, and then didn't make the playoffs regardless. But it wasn't a shock that they traded him to Oakland, I think, at the time. And then the bigger thing was that he didn't even make it to a game in Oakland. I think he was a cut in the offseason and a Patriot. That's how
That
bad it was. Like,
sounds right.
I think you traded him to trade like a third round pick for him or something, and immediately we're like, we're not even going to get this guy through camp. Remember that he burned his feet in the cryo chamber, amongst other things, and he kept trying to use an unlicensed helmet or his old one when it was no longer up to code and stuff. And I know we said we were wrapping this up, but Antonio Brown is Antonio Brown.
This is Joe Smith from the Midwest Football Podcast. Please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It all helps us grow our show. Look for our full show too, anywhere you find podcasts. Links below.